Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm starting this video a little bit weird. I was looking at my options for my spring Pixie doll, which is very late, but oh well. And I found this Enchantimals Royal Peacock doll in my stock box, and I swear to God, I'm the only person who like bought this. And I think the face paint is so ugly, but I wanted to see what it looked like underneath, and it's real cute underneath. So I was like, hey, you know what? Let's switch it up a little bit. I was gonna do what I typically do and put this head on a Cave Club body, but it occurred to me that they're basically the same scale. And I've seen people on Instagram switch out arms before, so I was like, you know what, let's give it a go, because your girl is not repainting a doll that's not fully articulated. It's just not gonna happen. So I heated up the Cave Club doll arms with a heat gun and I popped those out. It was actually really easy. I then heated up the Enchantimals arms. It was a little bit harder, but still also pretty easy. And those came out, and then I just switched them. I just squeezed it on in there. They basically have the same mechanism. I'd say once you pop it into the arm joint, just let it cool down and kind of set there, because it does fall out easily when it's still in that sort of squishy heated up mode. I'd say the Enchantimal arms are a little bit longer, but I think it looks pretty seamless. I also didn't want this like peacock feather thing on her back, so I'm heating it up first with my heat gun, and then I'm just cutting that thing off. And it's like really easy to cut because it's all hot and stuff. She don't need no stinking hair, so we're gonna be cutting it off. To pop her head off and to get all like the hair plugs out and like loosened, I put her head in hot water and then I pull her head off. However, the neck peg came off with it. There was no way that the neck peg was coming out through her neck hole. It just wasn't working, so I had to cut a giant hole in the back of her head with my X-Acto blade. Typically, if a neck peg came off, I would be just irritated. But honestly, this heat gun makes just a lot of things way easier. So since this is all plastic, I just heated up the plastic and I bent the little like bar slightly up. I slid the neck peg back in and then I just pushed it back down. And then I heated the plastic back up and pressed the neck together because it kind of like split when I was trying to get the bar back out. So it was a really easy process and it literally took me like maybe 3 minutes. You could do this with a blow dryer too. I feel like it would just take a while. So if you're like me and you have literally no patience, get you a heat gun. I loosened up all the hair plugs and pulled them out through the big old gaping hole in the back of her head with some needle nose pliers. She has the area in her back where she had the peacock feather thing and it's just looking real rough. So we're going to be taking some epoxy sculpt and I'm going to be smoothing it out. I'm gonna give her magnetic wings because I like magnetic wings, so I'm doing so with some epoxy sculpt and I'm gonna be smushing a magnet in there and then smoothing it down to her back. I like magnetic wings because like I feel like they're very low commitment. So if I don't want her to have wings, she cannot have wings. I decided to invest in some flesh colored spray paint, so that's what I did. This is actually Vallejo's hobby paint in pale flesh, so we're gonna give her some pale flesh with pale flesh. On to the face up. So I spray the doll 3 times with Mr. Super Clear, waiting 15 minutes between each spray. I'm wearing a respirator mask, and let's go. So I start with the eyes because like I always do, and I'm sketching them in with a red watercolor pencil. These eyes, I wanted them to be like pretty round and just kind of different than the other two dolls because I feel like the other two dolls have very almond shape eyes, I think. So I made hers very round, very just big, and also she has those cutesy cross-eyed eyeballs. I really like those. Honestly, for the eye shape, I was pretty inspired by the Magic Mixie's Pixie Supreme dolls. Those like dolls' eyes. They're just very big. They're also kind of cross-eyed. And I was looking at the one that I have while I was drawing this. We love blush around these parts, so I'm putting pink pastel just like pretty much all over her face, forehead, cheeks, nose, chin, ears, everywhere. I color in her waterline with a peach pencil. I begin shading the face with brown, so I put that like around her eyes, nostrils, around her lips and stuff, wherever I think there would be like a shadow or a contour on her face. And then also, I go in with my blue pan pastel that's like super light but also super pigmented, and I'm putting that around the face to create an undertone sort of look. I would say that I'm putting this wherever I feel like you would see like an undertone more, so basically wherever the skin would be like a little bit thinner, so like around the brow bone and the eyes and stuff, but I'm also just kind of putting it wherever like I want to, or wherever I think it would look good. To add to that undertone or like underlayer of skin, I am taking my light blue pencil and I'm just adding branch-like pencil marks around the eyes, forehead, chin. For her eye color, I want to do like orange eyes, but I think they're kind of just like morphed into brown by the time I was done this. But I'm filling it in. The pupil is with like a dark red, and then the rest of her eye I'm filling in with an orange. Them lips need more definition, so I'm taking a red watercolor pencil and I'm outlining the upper lip. And then I'm taking a red pan pastel and I'm patting that on the upper and lower lip in the middle. On to highlighting. So I'm taking my white pan pastel and I'm putting that on like the eyes, like on the under eye, the upper eye, or the brow bone, the nostrils, the chin, the inner corner, all sorts of places. I feel like it's like barely visible, but this pastel is like extremely pigmented, so it's just fun to see. She is pale flesh after all, which honestly relatable. With all that shading, her face just got a little bit dark in certain areas, so we gotta bring back the highlights with very hyper specific highlighting. I flicked some lines of red on the upper and lower lip, and this is just to give them lip wrinkles. I love me some lip wrinkles. I feel like all dolls should have them, or at least all dolls that are in my vicinity. I also love sparkles, so I gave her some Macro Pearl X pigment all over her face. Typically for lines around the eyes, for like lashes or just outlining your eyes, I go in with a very sharp black, but I decided I wanted her to have a bit of a softer look, so I'm going in with a very sharp dark brown. Honestly though, by the time I'm done, it just kind of looks black. It's really dark. Maybe it was too dark, I don't know. I did add shading to her upper iris with some black pan pastel just to create a more intense gradient. Now for brows. So I wanted her to have like soft brows, soft girl brows. So I didn't want to make them too dark, so I just went in with like a light brown and just gave her some light brown brows. So I do be liking a fuzzy iris, so I went in with my teeny tiny brush and some black watercolor paint, and I added some flicks of black going towards the pupil all around her iris. Now in retrospect, I kind of wish I did this with brown or like red, just again to kind of add to that soft look that I was kind of going for, because I just think it looks a little harsh with black. I don't hate it though. I also like to go in with some lines of highlights on the iris, and I did this with this light peachy pink. When I sprayed it though, it like disappeared. It was just not light enough, even though it looks very light. I did end up going over some of the lines with yellow watercolor, which I think added to the kind of brown look that it ended up with. I didn't want her to have like as, I guess, full of lashes as I typically do. I wanted to be a little bit spikier, a little bit sparser, so I'm adding very kind of sharp lines going upward on her upper and lower lashes. I went over that with brown watercolor, and I think it's looking very dark, but we are going to be like pumping up a little bit more highlights, at least on the lash line, in a little bit. I also decided that she needed freckles, because you know what? She's a soft spring girly, and I don't know, that just makes me think of freckles. So I did splatter her face with some brown. I wanted her to have a pink highlight on her lash line, and at first I did this with the same color that I used on the waterline. It was like a peach. And I thought it looked okay, but I thought I could kind of pump it up a little bit. So I took my fluorescent pink watercolor and I went over that on half of it at the end. And then I took a bright red watercolor pencil and I went over the inner half. So it like fades into a bright pink. I love my metallic, so I took a rose gold metallic watercolor pencil and I added that to the ends of the outer lashes. I also added a little bit to the waterline. Again, she's in her soft girl era, so I'm adding some flicks of that peach watercolor to her brows. So again, like I was saying, she's cutesy, so I want to give her a cute little white catch light. I did this with one bigger catch light that's like a circle on the inner portion of the eye, and then a smaller one going towards the outer portion of each eye. The finishing final touches are adding white highlights to the waterline, the lips, the cheeks. With Tamiya gloss, I put that on her mouth to give her a little glossy lippy look. Girly Pop needs some hair, so I'm going to be attaching wefts starting from the bottom and then working my way up. And I know I've used this yarn before, pretty recently. But it's like one of my favorite things for hair, and it has that pretty wavy look that I really love in yarn that I've been using for these dolls. You also probably noticed that she still has a giant gaping hole in the back of her head, which, you know, is unfortunate for her. But to be totally honest, when I do wefts, I just don't really find it necessary to like glue the head back together, because I'm gonna be like putting a bunch of glue and gluing her head together basically with the wefts, so it just feels redundant. Anyway, I'm gonna blush her body. So I'm just blushing her body with the same tones that I used on her face, on her body. she needs a flower crown. So I'm gonna be taking these little flower doodads that I got, and I bought these paper flowers like a while back. They were just kind of like a whatever purchase, but I've used so many of them. I just feel like, you know, they're just very useful. So they're a little bit bulky though, so I'm peeling back one of the layers of petals, and I'm just peeling it down that green wire. That green wire is actually what I'm going to be using to like twist together to create the crown. I didn't really want or need it to be like all around her head, so I'm just doing it around the sides and the back, and I wanted to have a little bit of gold in those flowers to go with her whole color scheme, so I'm just adding some gold paint to the flowers, some pearl details, and I also have these like flower glitter things, and I'm like, what better excuse? Literally, when else I'm gonna use these? So I used some on her face. Literally think she's so cute. On a close, so she's not gonna be a naked pixie. I mean, I guess she could be a naked pixie, but you know, that's not really the aesthetic I'm going for. So I'm hemming everything, and then on the bustier area I am sewing a dart into the cup. I sew the front and back together at the sides. After that, we sew on the cups. I also sew the back seam, and I sew the crotch seam. She needs like a skirt dress thing, so I'm taking this ruffle fabric and I sewed that on, and then I took some gold tulle, I sewed that underneath it, and I sewed organza underneath that I gather stitched. I sewed gold chain to the top of the bodice as well. I do love me a poofy sleeve, so I'm gonna give her a poofy sleeve. I have these 3 pieces of gold tulle, and I am gather stitching the big piece at the top of the bottom. Then I have 2 strips of tulle that are longer. I'm gather stitching both of those and sewing them at the top and the bottom. Once that's all done, I am folding it in half and sewing it up the back. I wanted to give her dress a little bit more of like a decoration, so off camera I made her a corset. One of my best friends had a baby shower, and their theme was like fantasy, and I was requested to dress my daughter up like a little fairy. She was so cute. However, the dress that I bought her, not the best quality. After she wore it, it basically like ripped in half. I threw the dress in my fabric box, and I noticed that the wing detail, I could probably cut and make wings for this doll, so that's exactly what I did. I sewed them together, and then I sewed them to this piece of tulle to give it a little bit more stiffness. I took a magnet and I put it on the back of my doll, and then I glued the wings onto that. I have a tendency to glue magnets on backwards, so I wanted to make sure I didn't do that, because it's like hella annoying when you do that. P.S. I do it literally like every time. But that is my finished spring pixie, and I know she's late, but she's here, so that's nice. Yeah, I love this doll. I loved that I used a base that I probably like wouldn't have otherwise. I feel like that doll probably would have been sitting in my stock box for like a million years if I hadn't used it for this doll. I love the scale. I love that she's a little bit different amongst her little fairy friends. That like arm thing also was a fun new thing I've never tried before, and I want to try it again, even though it's a little wasteful, I guess, with supplies, but whatever, okay? The next fairy I'm going to be doing is my fall fairy, so we got a little bit of time before I make her, and I really want to make her, I have like a deeper complected Cave Club doll, so I'm probably going to make her have like a deeper complexion. I already have, I think, the doll base I'm going to be using with the Cave Club body. So yeah, if you guys like this doll, you know, let me know in the comments. Like this video if you like this video, subscribe, makes me so happy, and I hope you guys are having a beautiful day. Bye.